Let's talk about relationships. Whew. This is the big topic here. I'm going to give you something that's going to change your life, I promise. Now, whether you're single or you're just starting a relationship or you've been in a relationship for 30 years, this is going to take you to a whole different level. Relationships are difficult, right? Relationships can be so difficult, frustrating. They can give you anxiety, they can make you lose sleep, they can make you, lose your freaking mind, right? Or relationships can be very enjoyable, pleasurable, exciting, functional, and healthy, and that's what we want to create. Now, did you hear that? It's something that we need to create. It's not just something that just happens. Okay, you don't just fall into love and then fall out of love, and no. This is built. This is good old fashioned hard freaking work. You rolling up your sleeves and getting to work. But now this is the thing: a lot of people are willing to put in the work, but they don't know where to point their energy. They're putting a lot of effort, but they're not getting the results that they want. So it's not just the effort that you're putting into the relationship; it's the direction that you're pointing that effort in. Now, I'm going to share with you 7 different areas where you and I need to be intentionally and consistently pointing our effort in, our energy into, our time into, in order to create functional, loving relationships. So here's the 7 things, okay? I'm going to break them down for you, but just remember this, okay? Here's a simple way to remember all 7. So above our heads, this is like in the heavenly realm, right? This is spiritual connection. So we got spiritual, and you drop a little bit lower. You have intellectual, okay? Then you drop a little lower, like where your heart is. This is emotional. Then where your abs are, think of this like you're gonna do some sit-ups. Now this is physical. Then you go drop a little lower, and then of course we get to the sexy part. This is the sexual. And then you go lower, thinking of your legs as you're gonna be social together. You're gonna be walking around being social together. And then all the way down to the bottom, thinking of your shoes, like you're going to buy some new shoes. And this is tied to the financial area. So again, spiritual, intellectual, emotional, physical, sexual, social, and financial. Those are 7 different areas, 7 dimensions, 7 different ways to create stronger, healthier relationships if you are consistently creating connection and communicating in these 7 different areas. Now, when you start to think about all the issues and problems that we have in relationships, why people cheat, why people start talking back and start being defensive, or they close up, or they get aggressive, or all these different things that we deal with that are the frustrating things in relationships, they all come from one thing. Like those are all symptoms of something else. You know what a symptom is? A symptom is like it's a headache. A symptom is like having diabetes. Those are not the real problems. Those are symptoms of something else, right? There has been a lifestyle of a way that we've been living that creates that headache or that sickness. Those are not the problems. They're a symptom of the real problem. The same thing in relationships. When you're dealing with all that frustration, that defensiveness, that reactiveness, that trying to control people, that anger, that closing up, the cheating, all these different things, they're symptoms of something else. Those are not the problems. Those are symptoms of the problem. And the main problem when it comes to your relationship, whether it's just starting, whether you've been in a relationship for a long time, it's all coming from one place. All these different problems that we deal with is coming from one place, and it's disconnection. There's no connection in that relationship, which is why we start to we get uncomfortable and we react and we start to get defensive and we start to try to get our needs met because they're not being met because we're not learning how to freaking communicate. So here are the 7 different areas that we need to purposely, on purpose, and sometimes it's painful, but hey, when you have a clear vision of what it's going to create, that pain all of a sudden has a purpose, right? Because you're dealing with 2 different personalities, 2 different backgrounds, 2 different beliefs, 2 different values. Of course, when you come together, you're going to have some conflict. Now, maybe at first it feels really good because you start to admire those things that are different about you. This person talks a lot, and you're like, wow, it's so amazing how you could just talk to anyone. Man, I wish I was like that. Or it's like, man, I see how patient you are, and how you're able to keep control and you don't lose things. And man, you don't lose your mind over things. I really admire that. Those things that you admired at first about that person, throughout time and maybe months or even years. Sometimes it doesn't, take that long. But all of a sudden, those things that you used to admire, that used to complete you, you feel are now competing against you. Now, instead of saying like, wow, I love how you can talk to everybody. You're so confident and charming. Everybody's your friend. Now all of a sudden it's like, man, you always have to freaking talk to everyone. But man, you're always wasting time making us late because you want to talk to everybody. Oh, you want to be everybody's friend. Like, come on, focus on me. Right? Or you're like, man, wake up. How come you never react to anything? You're just taking long for everything. You always have to think about things. You're indecisive. And I wish you would just speed things up. See, those things that you used to like, that used to complete you, are now competing against you and frustrating you. So this is why it becomes pain with a purpose when you start to have a good vision, a visualization of what you want in this relationship. What's your ideal relationship? How do you want it? Because now the pain of doing things and compromising and sacrificing and conflict resolution, the pain of it has a purpose because you know it's taking you somewhere, because you have a clear vision. So a clear vision will give the pain a purpose. Okay. So let's talk about these seven different areas where you and I, if we want to create strong functional relationships, we have to be doing things on purpose, with purpose, being intentional, being consistent, and creating connection and communication in these 7 different areas. So we got spiritual, intellectual, emotional, physical, sexual, social, and financial. So let's break each of these down in very simple ways. I'm not going to get too deep into this, okay? I want you to understand that there's those 7 different areas. Those are 7 targets that I want you to hit. See, without a target, you're not going to freaking hit it. So now that you have a target, okay, Richard, spiritual, but I'm not religious, or we have different religions, we have different backgrounds. What do we do there? It's about getting agreement. Communication is about, strengthening a relationship is about getting agreement, compromising, sacrificing, but talking about it. So it's not about religion. It's about, okay, what can you agree on? Whether they grew up in a church and you grew up in a different one, or one that had no spiritual background, no religious background, the other one was very strong, doesn't matter. It's about communicating and compromising, meeting each other in the middle and finding where do we have some agreement, some common ground, so we can build from there. So whether it's, maybe it's not going to this church because we both go to different ones. Okay. Instead of focusing on what you don't agree on and what you don't want to do, what can we agree on and what can we do? So maybe pray together, or maybe meditate together, maybe go walk in nature together, maybe read some kind of spiritual book together, doing something together so that you can have some kind of connection and communication in that area. So that's the main point. So when it comes to the spiritual realm, the spiritual dimension, the spiritual bridge to create this connection in, I want you to start to think about that already. But where can you add, something into your lives as a partner where you can do together, talk together in order to create communication? Because again, it's about communication in these 7 different areas. And that's going to be the main thing that's going to get rid of all these other problems that we deal with, because that's a symptom. Those problems are symptoms of not having connection in these different areas. Okay, so we got the spiritual connection here. So think about that, what that's going to look like for you and your relationship. Now we go down to intellectually. This is talking about thoughts, facts, ideas, being able to communicate these things, and you share, and then I listen and I get engaged and I repeat and rephrase. So that way, I'm listening, I'm engaged. I'm not just going to, oh yeah, I want to do that too. No, like you have to be able to communicate, which means like, okay, you have the mic, and then I have the mic. You share airtime, right? You're taking turns sharing, taking turns listening. This is really key when you're creating connection in all these different areas. So when it comes to the intellectual part, this is talking about more superficial things sometimes, but it's still good, right? You need to talk about, okay, what the weather was, how your day was, what did you do at work, how did you do it, what were the people like, like creating conversation around thoughts, facts, and ideas. Okay, conversation, connect. You share, they share, you ask one, they share one about facts, thoughts, and ideas. Now we can go a little bit deeper into the emotions, right? Now we can create connection in that area. Now we're talking about, emotions. We're talking about fears, passions, talking about things that frustrate you, things that keep you up at night, your goals, the things that are getting you excited, make you come alive. Now all of a sudden, you're not just sharing about thoughts, facts, and ideas, but you're talking about deeper things and how they make you feel. Now, I don't know about you, but I know for me as a man, I wasn't taught how to do this. And a lot of people that I coach, that I train, when it comes to corporate, when it comes to entrepreneurs, when it comes to, all different levels and people all around the world, because I've been doing this for 20 years in over 25 nations, training people to better their relationships in every area, because your relationships will determine and define the quality of your life. All the most important things that you do in your life are all revolving and evolving around people and your relationships with them, right? So we got to learn how to communicate and connect. Now, one of the really important ways to connect with depth, so it's not just superficial surface conversation, you got to get into the emotional part. And I know for me as a man, I wasn't taught that. And women are usually very emotional. They're emotionally rich, and I say that as a good thing, right? But men, a lot of times, are disconnected emotionally. So generally speaking, men need to introduce their minds to their hearts. And generally speaking, women need to introduce their hearts to their mind. That way there's the balance here where you're not just all in your head and you're not just all emotions either, right? They got to work together. Now, when it comes to communicating with our partner or with somebody, we have to learn how to not only, it's this emotional intelligence of understanding, being aware of our own emotional states, why we feel certain things, right? And then also being able to engage in listening to others and how they feel, whether we agree or not. This is how you start to communicate and connect. This is emotional intelligence. This is something that you and I need to develop in order to have healthy, functional relationships. So we already talked about creating connection, communication on purpose, with purpose, spiritually, intellectually, and now emotionally. How about physically? This is physical attraction, physical activities, and physical touch. Physical attraction. This is you taking care of yourself. Not just letting yourself go, you dressing good, smelling good, doing things so that your partner is attracted to you. Working out, eating right, brushing your hair, brushing your teeth, simple things like that to make sure that you're physically attractive to your partner. That's one part of the physical. How about physical activities together? Going for a walk, going to watch a movie, going to eat dinner, going to a concert, doing things together as a partner. So that way you're active together. This is something that creates connection. Physical touch is another way. So we're talking about the physical. Some in relationships, usually one person is very physical and they're very affectionate, and the other person not so much. But this is where we need to learn each other, compromise, and learn how to connect and communicate in all these different areas, and not just make it all about you and how you want it, how you don't want it, how you want to be talked to, how you do. It's not all about you in a relationship. You have two people coming together to make one, right? And it doesn't mean you drop your identity or drop what you like. No. You start to understand what you both and learn how to compromise and sacrifice in order to create, enjoyment for both. So we're talking about creating connection spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, and now physically. How about sexually? This is another area when you're in a partner relationship that is really, really important. Those things that build up, they're not like really, really important, but those little things in the relationship that just frustrate you and they can start to build up to where you're just like, you're done. Like you get frustrated and you start to lash out, or it just comes out. Those little things that are not deal breakers, but they start to add up. Those little things, sex just erases them. Like those little things that start to really gain power, lose power when you have that sexual interaction with your partner. And this is, especially when you start thinking about creating connection with your partner, there's not really any deeper, more intimate that you can be with your partner. I mean, like for the most part, you're naked, right? You're naked and unashamed. You're like, this is me. And now this person's accepting you the way you are, and you're accepting them, and you're literally becoming one, right? Physically, in your soul, in your body. It's a really, really deep, intimate moment when there is that sexual part in your relationship. So it's really talking about this as well, because in relationships, you'll have one person that's like you ask them, how much sex do you need, or how much sex do you want? One person's like, oh, well, once, twice a month, it would be great. And then the other one would be like, once or twice a month. I'm talking about once or twice a day. So you'll have different aspects, different perspectives, different wants and needs, even when it comes to the sexual dimension. So you have to talk about it. Yeah. And I know a lot of people get uncomfortable in this area and they haven't been, taught how to talk about these things, but you need to, especially if you really value this person, you care about them. You have to learn how to talk in each of these different areas because they're a part of our needs as a man, as a woman. And if you're not getting your needs met because you're not communicating it, it's going to create other problems down the road. So it's better to talk about these things that even if they're uncomfortable. So, talk about what does it look like for your needs to get met sexually. Talk about it. Put it on the table. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you want to try? What don't you want to try? Talk about it, all right? Make it fun. We got spiritual, intellectual, emotional, physical, sexual. Now let's talk about like our legs. Like we're going to go be social together. Now, a lot of times I see relationships, they go to events together. They go to family parties together. They go to things together. But once they get there, they separate. Like the guys go with the guys, the girls with the girls. That's okay sometimes. But if you really want to strengthen your relationship, you got to go to these places and represent like how you are as a couple, as a unit. Not go there and then separate. No, go there and represent like this is how we are together. Having conversations with the guys and girls, whatever, but together as a unit, this creates a very strong bond for yourself when you do this socially. Now, again, when it comes to even socially, you'll have one person in the relationship that they need to go out in front of other people. Like it gives them life, right? If they're not interacting with people going out, they start to feel like they're dying. Now, the other person in the relationship is more introverted, more of a maybe recluse, a homebody. And just going out once a month is a lot for them. This is another area where you have to talk about it. You have to compromise. You have to meet each other in the middle. You have to sacrifice in order to meet each other's needs. This is how you create stronger relationships. We got spiritually, intellectually, emotionally, physically, sexually, socially. Now we start thinking about, okay, buying new shoes. This is just a way to remember because it's the financial dimension. Now, this is one of the areas that breaks a lot of relationships, especially marriages, over the financial stress, the financial miscommunication, the financial disagreements when it comes to the relationship, the marriage, the home with the kids, all these different things, because they don't talk about it. This is another area that people are not really trained to talk about. Most people are not talking about money. They feel uncomfortable talking about that. But when it comes to you strengthening your relationship, you have to have this conversation. Is money important? Start to define what is money. Is it important to you on a scale of 1 to 10? Why is it important to you? How much is enough? How much do we need to make? How much do we need to save? How much do we need to invest? What are we going to do with our investment money? Like all these different types of conversations you need to talk about. How about if you're going to have kids and raise them up? Is there going to be allowance? In all these different areas you can talk about, even like the spiritual side even, right? If you're going to be having kids, how are you going to raise your kids with these different areas as well? How are you going to help them to be social? How are you going to help them to be emotional? These are all different things to talk about. So when it comes to the finances, don't just leave that on the side. Don't just be like, okay, you have your account, you have your work, and I'll have mine, and we'll just keep it separate. You can, but make sure you're talking about these things because, again, it's about creating a strong, functional, loving relationship, and that doesn't just happen. You have to create it through connection and communication. So what are the 7 different areas? We got spiritual. Come on, do it with me. Spiritual, intellectual, emotional, abs, like physical. Go a little bit lower. Hey, we got sexual, a little bit lower. Let's go be social together. A little bit lower, financial. 7 different areas, 7 bridges to create connection, to strengthen your relationship. 7 different dimensions to intentionally talk to your partner. And these things will prevent so many problems in your future, so many things that so many relationships deal with and break up over with. And it's all due to a lack of connection, lack of communication in these 7 areas. So I appreciate you. Go ahead and comment below if you know another area that you think should be important, then put it in the comments. If there's one of these or 2 of these areas that you feel like, man, that's true, but I don't know how to talk in those areas, put it into the chat. This will show me what other kind of information I could put a video on. Comment, share this stuff. I appreciate you. I'm Richard Martinez. I wrote a book on this. I have a book on the art of relationships. I have another book on the 7 steps to create self-confidence, where I get into relationships in here as well. Of course, not as in depth as this book on relationships, but very, very good stuff where I give you good tools on how to create connection in all these different areas. So again, spiritual, intellectual, emotional, physical, sexual, and financial, different ways for you to create strong, healthy relationships.